Welcome to yet another episode of how we can be able to turn challenges into opportunities. And today we're going to look at how can environmental solutions become the arsenal to turn challenges into opportunities, how we create jobs for our youth across the world and also in the African continent. There we're going to look at the intrinsic values that each and every one of us need to be able to make a difference in each of our community, moving the needle forward as we drive transformational development for people and planet. And today we have a special guest, and that guest is Robert Mungiri. In this conversation with Robert today, and as well as yourself, because we'll be throwing in some comments, we're going to look at what can we as individuals do. And in the course of taking environmental action and also climate change action, how can we be able to turn these challenges into opportunities and create the needed jobs and create world opportunity with more money in more pockets? And at the same time, ensure that we can then be able to put food on the table. With me in studio now is Robert. Robert, welcome. How are you doing today? Great to have you here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mulan. Thank you, sir. It's a great pleasure to join you for the conversation today, and it's much humbling. So thank you very much.
Excellent. No, it's a great pleasure to have you. This is a conversation, and welcome to the Innovative Volunteerism Spot. And here we are going to have a conversation today. Our viewers are eagerly waiting to hear from us on exactly what this animal called climate change is all about. We've seen droughts and flood cyclones, and we see these hurricanes that are plaguing millions of people and plunging them into suffering. So in the mind of someone in a community sitting in a village in Kisumu or in Taita Taveta or in Douala in Yaoundé or in Bamenda in Cameroon or in Lagos or in Abuja in Nigeria or in Nasarawa or in Lomé, Togo, what does this changing climate present? Is it only a challenge or it's also an opportunity? Break it down for us.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. Actually, climate change is both a challenge and the solutions to it now are also an opportunity. The challenges are clear for all to see. When the yield continues to drop year after year in a farm, in a village, that's a challenge. When we see less rain, I mean, there's a time I heard you speak in an interview say that actually the trend is such that over the past, from the 60s to date, we have seen a decline precipitation of a rate of decades. So what happens is, in the 60s, we had like a drought in 20 years. Then it comes down to a drought every 10, then every 5, then a drought every year. So these are challenges that are being seen day in, day out, and they're affecting the ordinary people down at the ground level. But those who present a solution to these challenges then tap into those opportunities that come from those solutions and create opportunities for others to tap in. So what we see is a chain reaction of solutions in through the climate action lens, and I believe that's what we need to talk about. So, for example, if the application, let's say the declining precipitation as you have talked about, that's an opportunity to say, how can the little precipitation that is already there be harvested more and then deployed at, during the drought times? So how do we handle that dichotomy of increasing droughts, but at the same time increasing intensity of rain? So those dichotomies, the people who come up with solutions to those dichotomies now are the ones that create opportunities, and those opportunities are now tapped by other people. So it becomes a chain reaction of solutions, and I believe we'll talk more of that as we continue.
Excellent, Bob. And I think that is really clear, and it provides that perspective that instead of just looking at climate change as a challenge, it provides a lot of opportunities. Now, when it comes to the opportunities perspective, climate change is a cross-cutting issue, and a lot of people would say, well, when we were growing up, we were plagued or we encountered droughts and floods, but today we still encounter the same. Why should we worry about something that we used to see as we were growing up? And why I'm bringing up this question is that when people become accustomed to something, it means nothing to them. Yes, they are not happy about it, but they are not unhappy to create a solution for it. What is becoming of this, and how can we address this apathy?
Yes, sure. Actually, the apathy arises from the feeling of hopelessness. You know, there's a time I believe a report was done showing that among the youth, for example, there's a lot of apathy going on with the narrative of climate change, which mostly focuses on the negatives, not the opportunities. Focuses on the liabilities, not the investment that can come out of climate change. And that is the cause of apathy. So someone will ask themselves, okay, so when I look at news all the time, what I see is the only news that I see are those of a flood happening in a certain place, or of a drought and of people suffering. But what we don't see is that in between those floods, or in between those, there are people who are actually doing things that are offering reprieve and creating opportunities for themselves. For example, I think out of the work we have seen of young people doing across Africa, we saw, for example, during the recent emergency that was going on, the COVID emergency, that application of climate solutions actually resulted in people actually earning more through increasing the shelf life of their harvest and having them to leverage better in the market, because they can now market and bargain for better prices without the fear of losing their harvest. So what we saw was a solution coming in. We saw, for example, also during that time, that 12% of the solutions of the solutions that were put forward to address different aspects of the emergency actually came from Africa. But these are things that were never brought to the fore.
Right.
So what I'm saying is the narrative, we're sure. Yeah, so the
narrative projects liability instead of projecting opportunities. And that has been a very big issue, because if you, building on that point that you have put up, in the 2000s to 2011, the cliche of Africa rising, especially culminating in 2013, was a narrative that was embraced without critiquing how come Africa is rising and we still have high levels of poverty. How come Africa is rising and we still have high levels of unemployment? How come Africa is rising and the levels of food insecurity keep getting exacerbated each and every day? And so the point you are making is quite very, very clear, that sometimes we do not craft the narrative that makes meaning to the common person on the ground and is realistic, but we embrace narratives sometimes that are more just palatable when it comes to speaking rather than matching with reality. And so this is a very big issue. So to what extent do you think the narrative of development generally in the African continent is an issue?
I'll just pivot back to what you say. In the 2010s, Africa was declared a rising continent. 5 years later, what do you hear? We never hear of that. Instead, we hear of sound bites here and there that maybe the continent is limping. So what happened is that the falling commodity prices at that time, which were actually the peg that was used to say that Africa is rising, then the reality hit that indeed we cannot talk of headline growth that only touches the few, the 3% who are, let's say, engaged in the extractive sector, and call that growth. That cannot really be growth. Growth actually happens when the quality of life of the people at the grassroots, or the people who are the majority players of an economy, in this case, the informal sector in Africa, when they are booming. What do you usually hear of the middle class? The middle class is what usually drives the economy, and in this case, in Africa, the middle class should be the informal sector. So as they thrive, then the economy grows. So what we need more is the implementation or actions or incentives that target what is already working with these informal actors, so that it can grow and it can be expanded, and out of the expansion, then real intrinsic growth can be experienced. Headline growth is fickle and usually driven mostly by narratives that are not really realistic.
Yeah, you mentioned something that we need to build on what works and frame our narratives around reality, not these elusive narratives that sometimes are more palatable just in terms of speaking or talking. I would like to play a clip for 1 minute here, and I would like to get your perspective on that, especially on some of these actions that mothers are actually undertaking in communities. And I would like to get your perspective on that.
Has benefited you personally? Dryers can benefit benefiting me or benefit the group by using the dryer, you have flour and you'll be able to sell to many people. And by so doing, it will be a source of income in the group.
All right. So you're saying that when you dry, you get to add value to whatever you have dried. You make flour, and you also increase your sources of income.
Yes.
You have mentioned that you're in a group. So in groups, normally we have some sort of cooperatives, but we call them chamas. As a chama that has been working together in drying, how would you say that chama has helped you?
The chama can be a benefit to the members of the group by, without the dryers, we do not have anywhere to dry our crops. But using the dryers is a bit cheaper, and it's a way of correcting these foods in those varieties by adding the food values. Also, on the other hand, it has added some value to farmers because the crop like cassava, we do plant it, and in our area, it doesn't fetch much money. But from the things these things were started, people are bringing cassava here, and it's being bought, and they are happy.
Okay, so as a group, you guys also bring your resources together to help each other.
Yes.
All right. Okay, thank you very much.
I'm Teresia Wangui Kenya from Kaki Water Project.
Yes, Bob, these are practical solutions, practical climate action solutions. The communities are benefiting as a result of these solutions decentralized to them through the concept of innovative volunteerism, which is happening within the Abafusa framework. These are realistic actions that are benefiting communities. They are the ones giving first-hand information there. Why are narratives not framed around these workable solutions in the continent? What is preventing logic and reason to be embraced, rather than talking about issues as if they have never happened, they do not exist, when practically we are seeing that just decentralizing a simple climate action solution to a mother in a community changes her life? That's what we just heard from the mother there, explaining how that dry have changed their life. What is holding us back?
Yes, I think there's what they call the mainstream. So the mainstream of climate action has always been, I think going just back to what we said before, has always been on projecting liability. That is what seems to sell, projecting liability. However, the alternative we are seeing now is that climate action can actually be a source of opportunities, and opportunities that really matter. And the only way that can be is when it is decentralized in a way that makes sense to the majority who are in the informal sector and the people on the ground, our mothers in the fields out there. When it makes sense to them, then we now are moving towards where we need to be, which is climate action being a source of opportunities and not projecting liability. And in this case, the only sense that needs to be had on the ground is socioeconomics. They need to see it. They need to see that the climate actions, whatever you want to call it, is actually increasing their socioeconomic bottom, which it is increasing the revenues. We had some of them saying that they're in chamas, they're incorporated. So how can this climate action solution then be a source of increasing the ability to save more or to put more in their cooperative, and then in that sense better take care of their families and develop themselves? So actually what you are saying here, as you have correctly said, the mainstream of the narrative, as in my response, the mainstream of narrative is such that climate change only is sellable when it is projecting liabilities. But what we are saying, what actually can work with the majority on the ground, where it can impact on the register, is when it becomes a source of opportunities from a socioeconomic angle, and that is what we need more. And how then do we get this more of this change in narrative? When the symbiosis that we are seeing there becomes the norm. What we are seeing there is what? Young people controlling their skills through innovative volunteerism, being selfless, not looking at what they're getting out of what they're doing immediately, but looking at the long term, looking at how this solution can make sense to ordinary people on the ground. These people taking it up, and when they take it up, creating opportunities for themselves, and then seeing it more as something that is of value to them, and they can invest in it. And that's what we are seeing. So we need more of this symbiosis where young people are retooling their skills and then they work with the community, nurture the community to be a market, and then deliver these solutions more and more. The communities take them up as a source of investment, and then we can now see more of this cycle coming up, and over time the narrative will change. It will change from just looking at the headline news, which talk of liabilities, to looking at the opportunity. So I believe this is innovative the way to go, and we're on the right track.
Excellent. I think we will take a break now, and when we come back, we will be discussing on the kind of intrinsic values that Africans and even the globe needs to be able to embrace actions that can move the needle forward, but do so through the lens of the environment, and how each and every one of us can play a role. For those who are watching, please drop your comments and your questions and your ideas and perspectives so that at least we can be able to have an interaction with you today. All of you watching, there is a comment site on which whether you are watching on Facebook or on YouTube or on LinkedIn or on Twitter, you can be able to drop a comment and we will be able to see it and get back to you. We'll be right back after this advert. Thank you.
Some of the groups we have trained, we have been serving another associations. We have sourced these trainers from over 7 groups. And what you see back home, we are still making the briquettes using the machines which are fabricated by the youth. This is the systems approach whereby we enable these groups to get cassava cuttings of over 40 acres, and some of the groups are planted them and they have come out very well, as you see, and also drying them using cassava, using the solar dryer, using a solar dryer, and after that, we have trained them on fire addition, using the cassava drops from the solar dryer, and also using the raw materials from the cassava, which are peelings and also other flour to make the briquettes. So we have trained a number of over 40 today in briquettes making, and they are ready to, some of them are ready to use the machines to see how these machines function, and also make small company or so they can start getting some income in order to increase their saving. The other reasons for this is to improve their livelihoods, increase on their saving, and also make sure that they stop using the firewood and charcoal, and also turn to using briquettes. Because briquettes are smoke-free, they are quick at burning, they take long, over 4 hours, and we have tried that.
Yes, and we are back. We are back, Bob, and during that commercial break, which was to be used as an opportunity to showcase what is happening, I could see there in the Buganda Kingdom where actions through the framework of the Babasali Volunteerism briquettes are being made from waste, and the briquettes are replacing charcoal, which is choking our mothers in communities. They are dying, over 100,000 of them in the continent today. And building on these are things that can be done by ordinary citizens. They do not need any rocket science. They do not need any heavy cash. But what is missing in us as human beings that we cannot be able to do that, which is easier to build on it and generate the data as you are talking about to make it become the norm and not the exception? What do we need? What do Africans need? Especially the African youth, what do they need to be able to embrace solutions that are at their own doorstep to make a change in both their lives and the community?
Yes, thank you very much, sir. Actually, in my take, the biggest issue is the lack of self-belief. That is, for me, the biggest issue among most of us, because they don't see themselves as being able to make a change. It is actually, I think that is actually the biggest thing in the innovative volunteerism work that we are seeing. Most of them still believe that they're not really capable. They're not seeing themselves as the actually source of solutions that they're seeing themselves more as victims. You know, I think there's a time we discussed something to the extent that for most of us, having a certification, any form of certification, is seen as an entitlement to receive
As a
something,
gateway, as a
Yes.
license,
as a license.
a job.
Absolutely, to a job. No complaints. You cannot blame them because that is the culture, or that is the way, the conditioning.
The autopilot culture.
Yes, that is, you called it the other day, autopilot mentality. That is the norm in society. That is what you are told from the time you are growing up, that you do this, you do the other, you finish school, then you get a job. You see, so that now becomes the norm. That is the norm. But that norm has not worked. As we speak, 13 million young people are out there looking for work.
Right.
And the opportunities are shrinking, you see. The competition is increasing. And they're shrinking more. Why? Because the economic model that we see is one that is not anchored on solutions provisions as a source of creating enterprise. So most of them then are stuck in this area where they are partly victims, partly not sure what to do, partly not believing in themselves. But this is why now I think I need to say that innovative volunteerism really has come at the right time, because we are now seeing more and more people, young people, ordinary people just like us, taking the step and doing something and getting something out of it, making impact, nurturing communities into markets, delivering solutions that tap what we read in books. For example, we read that, like the example you showed right now, talking of briquettes. What we read is that the market for charcoal in Africa is worth 20 billion and over. These young people we're seeing in Uganda, innovative actors, what they're doing, they're actually tapping into a 20 billion a year opportunity by providing an alternative that is 2 times cheaper, that is more dignified, and that is actually performs better in terms of the fire producer, in terms of what it's supposed to do, which is the cooking. So more of these examples will incentivize and will inspire more people to change and become solution providers and stop seeing themselves as victims or stop seeing themselves as entitled to be given something.
So
yes, I believe that's the case.
Exactly, Bob. Thank you very much for that. I mean, this behavior of not availing self to be part of the solution, but always availing self to complain about the problem. How can we break this ice? It's been there for long. We talk, we share examples, we showcase, but nothing seems to be changing. How do we get out of this? I'm trying to find a word. How do we get out of this space in which everybody has engulfed himself in and nobody wants to get out of the yoke?
Absolutely. Actually, I think, to agree with you, it has become worse because there are more avenues of complaining now than there are before.
Social media.
Yes, social media is used for that typical, engagement of either entertaining oneself, wasting a bit of time there, looking at what may not really be of much value, complaining, venting, and all the while things remain the same. What I think is,
before you continue, I mean, there's this. You see, the point is this: we are not in any way saying people should not be able to complain about an issue, but what we are saying is, as you complain, can you also explain to us what you are doing to solve that problem, so that at least we can then, at the end of the day, instead of complaining about the problem, we are saying, this is the problem, this is how I'm doing it, and I need more hands, so that at least we can turn this problem into an opportunity. That is not the narrative, and that is not even the attitude. And when you want to talk about from that perspective, it seems like nobody wants to listen. So what do you think can be done to break this ice? Because it's a serious issue, and like you rightly said, people are not getting more opportunities in terms of complaining. When I say opportunities, in that they have more spaces in which they can then complain, and nothing changes, then they come the next day and they complain. The next year and complain, and nothing changes, and they seem to be getting some fun and fulfillment out of this attitude. How can we break this for real?
Sure. Actually, let me also just correct myself. Right. There's no blaming of any young people. I mean, any young person. Yeah, I mean, these are our people, these are our families, these are our friends.
Right.
So no complaint about young people, and we cannot deny the fact that they have not really been shown anything better so far. I mean, let's agree. But at the same time, I think to come to you now in terms of the solution. I think we need to start addressing this through the institutions that we have more seriously. There's a time I heard you talk about we cannot really address anything midway. There are some things that we cannot really address the midstream. There's some things that one needs to go back and start from the beginning to address them. And I think the institutions that we have in this continent, and I'm not talking about legislative or government, I'm just talking about the ordinary social institutions we have in society, the family, the schools, and even the religious institutions. They need to be the places that shape the psyche, places that shape the mindset of our population. They need to be at the forefront of sending clear narratives and clear messages that we as the population, we as ordinary citizens, we owe ourselves the futures, the solutions that we desire. We actually, the continent, the countries depend on us to be providers of solutions. So the issue here is more of a mindset, and how that mindset can be changed through leveraging institutions that most of us engage in. And these are the family institution,
right. But
yes,
you are mentioning something very important. I think just as you are talking, Chiramba says, great to listen to someone who you can see on the screen here. It's Chiramba. He says, great to listen to someone else, admitting that we all need to help save the environment if we make cash out of it or get some sort of pleasure from our actions. The way to put it is monetize the solutions to climate change. And I think this is exactly what we are trying to do. And I think building on that, without steering you off from what you were saying, but there seems to be a failure when it comes to the narrative of solutions to the problems we face today. And if you do not monetize action, people will feel as if they're doing some kind of voluntary work. Oh, what am I going to get out of it? And then if I don't do it, then nothing changes. So how do you think we can then be able to lay the foundation? Yes, building the institutions that work, instilling in people the values that work, but through that lens that if they do it, they benefit.
Absolutely. I think we have to start with the institutions that we have to start with what we already have now. The platforms that we already have that engage in this space of climate action should now look into bringing in non-typical actors into this space. For example, just to give an example of InnovativeVolunteerism, what we are seeing is people who are not necessarily in the climate action arena coming in and devising solutions, retrieving their skills to devise solutions that then generate income. Because let's face it, not everything that you do will generate income unless you do it with that intention from the word go. Climate action needs to be from that dimension. Anything done in climate action should be from that lens of how can it be monetized, as our good friend has said it, and how can it be a marketable solution that many people can buy it and buy it affordably. So the platforms that we have now need to follow that as a model. InnovativeVolunteerism is one. There are many others, I believe, across the continent. The aspect of taking climate action as a social endeavor or an environmental endeavor really needs to change. It needs to become an enterprise endeavor. And more actors who are not necessarily from the field will come in, they cross-subsidize ideas, whether it be in terms of technology, whether it be in terms of approaches, and we'll see more of these enterprises coming up from climate action. Yes, so the platforms you have need now to change and take that.
And that is a very good point. Let me just play this clip, and then how people are already explaining how climate actions are helping them to put food on the table and money in their pockets. And then from there, we will build on this. And then the aspect of values will still come back to it so that we'll have a conversation around it, because if you look at the attitude of the issues we face, the externalization of solutions, whereas there are local solutions that can be embraced, sometimes never really seems to get attention, but for the externalization to continuously getting revved up. How can we change that mentality? After this video, we will dive straight to that question.
And we have the blend of gardens, so we hope we shall receive Bafosa, we assume that in the coming days or months, we shall receive enough cassava to dry in our dryer. We have those trees, we have the lot of gardens, so we hope we shall receive more cassava to dry in our dryer.
So, in the previous season, do members still have the cassava in their gardens?
They have, but they don't have much. So we hope we are going to add on more from what we received from the Bafosa, because we received the cassava trees. Yeah.
So how has according to the village, observing this solar dryer being in this place, how have they seen it as a community? Because you are the only group in this region having this solar dryer. So, according to you,
They are very happy, and they are willing to use it to accommodate good weather, because they receive good cassava from it, and they are willing to use it.
how many so far kilograms have you dried in this solar dryer?
As I told you before, cassava has been little, but now we have managed to dry at least like 150 kg from our dryer, and we assume by the end of June, because we are ready to look for another cassava and we dry in our dryer. So apart from that kilograms I have told you, we assume we can double it, and we upgrade our outcome from the dryer.
So, I'm seeing a fence on a dryer. Maybe you can hold on it. We can go there and hold on it. What is the use of this fence perimeter wall you made?
The committee of the dryer,
which is a chapel stone, to boil the porridge with and water, also boil the beans to see the longevity of the briquettes which are made by Bafosa Uganda and Africa Farmers Media Center. Thanks for this group, and we are collaborating with CBS Pewisa Cooperative, and that's why we are in this Village Around Association trying to make income generating activities for them. And one of them, the briquettes which are trained the urban crops. And for the rural groups, we go into value additions and also EDA, which is ecosystem-based adaptation approaches, so that they can increase on their savings. Thank you very much.
The Innovative Volunteerism Youth.
I can just tell them thank you. In fact, they should bring more and more for these dryers.
Yes.
And I would encourage them to continue with this work, because they will improve the lifestyles of these women, and even the whole world. Yeah. Thank you.
My name is Tabitha Nyawira.
Yes, Bob.
Yes.
From Uganda, Buganda Kingdom to Kirinyaga in Kenya, we're seeing solutions, seeing communities saying they are drying their cassava, they're harvesting, they're putting money in the pockets. We're seeing communities being trained to turn briquettes, turn waste into briquettes. And then we're seeing mothers acknowledging opportunities, drying their maize, drying their beans, drying their rice. So what is making us in the continent not to believe in what we have?
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, let me just start by commenting on what we are seeing there. Really, really a very, very encouraging thing we are seeing there. And what I believe you've said before, chain reaction of solutions. Right. From the ground where that is not enough, because the value people see is monetary, so you cannot monetize at that upstream level. And moving on to value addition and on to marketing, and all this being driven through the climate action lens, where climate action actually is providing solutions, marketable solutions that the people are seeing benefit of in terms of in terms of monetary and taking them up. So this really is something that is really nice, and I think more of what we do needs to be taking that dimension across the continent, that dimension of a chain reaction, starting from the ground, going to the intermediate, and finishing at the end. Not just stopping what we usually hear all the time, that we need to produce more, no, going all the way, and climate action now intervening to provide the solutions. Now, to come to your question, why are we not seeing more of this? Why is it not being
built on, leverage on to make progress?
Exactly.
We keep seeing duplication of efforts, new things coming as if they have never happened. Why don't we build on this? Say, okay, you did this. What is the gap? Then we build on that and move forward.
Yes, absolutely. For me, I take that to be because the aspect of the cash or the aspect of the financing aspect is not being seen more clearly. People are not really seeing the financial benefit of it directly. The scale of financing in terms of not financing in terms of what comes in, but what comes out of the process is not really coming out very clearly, and people are not seeing the financial benefit they're getting out of it. So more of this, as they say, Rome was never built in a day. As more of this gets out there, as more of these solutions get to the communities and more people testify of what they're getting, and more of these solutions get taken up through inclusive structures of financing, like the cooperatives that we had in Uganda, or even the community groups in Kirinyaga who are taking this up and investing it and using what the income they're getting and investing in their own cooperative. So as more of this financing aspect or the financial benefit aspect comes out, then there will be more of the people.
Right.
There will be more people who actually see the benefit of it and investing. Because let's not run away from this truth that the real motivator for more people is the finance. If they see that they're getting money out of something, they'll put their money in it.
That is
whether little or most or much they will. So the more we see testimonial of people getting financial benefit of it and building on structures that are inclusive, then the more of these solutions will be taken up. I believe so.
That's very interesting. What is the role of culture in this? Because we cannot wipe out the cultural aspect that somehow have contributed to the attitude of blame game, or most of the time, that have contributed to the attitude of not self-believing in what we can put in place to address challenges. Because the point is, there is absolutely nothing wrong to have something else where to supplement what is already on way. That's fine. Ideas evolve, innovations evolve. But the argument here is, why is it that local innovations are not embraced by the very people who need them most? And you've said rightly that at least when they start to see money in it, they will embrace. But who are those who will do it without seeing money so that others will embrace? Because they seem to be dancing the same song in the same place with very few moving forward to do that which others can follow. So how do we break that ice? I go back to the same thing.
Sure. The culture aspect. Now, so the finance is one, but the culture is there. Actually,
Right.
I think we can even say this with significant level of certainty. That
Yes.
had the solutions been brought in by some other groups, they will be embraced, because the assumption is that whatever comes from this other group will be, beneficial to us. They benefit us more than what we are seeing being produced locally. There's a saying that a prophet is never
Welcome
appreciated in their own village. Yes, welcome in their own hometown. Familiarity brings contempt. They say, "Oh, what is this one doing?" Whatever.
Correct.
So there's more. Absolutely, the culture that we have around is a detriment to a very large extent. And addressing that, once again, I'll go back to what you said. I think you told me sometime that some of these problems you cannot solve midstream. You have to start from that goal. You have to start with the young people. The young people have to change their attitude. You see, and that is why I believe your focus is mostly, considering that you say young people are a bigger hope for Africa. It has to start from there. They have to change the way they think. They have to start appreciating more of our local solutions. They have to appreciate more, believe in themselves more, that they're actually capable of providing solutions, they're capable of being solution providers, and then build it from there. But
Do you think, Ibo,
yes.
do you think young people are inspired enough to take the bull by the horns and lead the way through the solutions lens, or you think they are not inspired in the way they're supposed to be inspired, and so now they relegate themselves to be complainers in chief? What is your gut feeling with this?
Absolutely. I believe there's always room for improvement. The innovative volunteerism actors we are saying, most of them are young people. So we cannot say that they're not inspired. So those who are already doing it, the few who are doing it are inspired. They believe in themselves. They are out there. They are selfless enough. They are saying that they understand what is going on, and they believe that they can be the solution providers, and they can nurture their communities to be a market unto them. So we cannot say that young people are not inspired. They are inspired. But out of what is happening with this critical, what we need to generate now more is a critical mass of people who are taking these solutions up, and from them, the more will be inspired, because I believe inspiration is a form of incentive. More will be inspired by seeing others doing it. I believe most people, averagely, will believe in a product. People believe in a product, not a process. So when they see more of a product coming in and people benefiting from that product, then they'll believe in it more. So what I'd say is innovative volunteerism and more of these kind of platforms that we have across the continent need to actually continue, never be discouraged, but continue and generate more of this groundwork of examples which will inspire more action. I believe, of course, there'll be those who will never change. I mean, that is given in society. There are those who will always be naysayers. But there are those who are pessimistic, but are looking to see what they'll get out of it, what others are getting out of it, and they'll throw their hat in the ring. So I believe consistency is what we need more of in our current times. Consistency.
Excellent, excellent. I think that is a very interesting perspective. This is the sport, and in the sport, you also have the opportunity to ask questions. But before I get to that, today is Sunday, and there are many people who have already gone to church, and others who may be going to church as we speak, and others who are coming out of church, and also who go to church in the evening. What is the role of the church, or what should have been the role of the church in perfecting the right attitude to drive climate action solutions and transformational development? And why is that not happening?
I think that's a very excellent question, because these are social institutions that can have a very foundational and very fundamental role to play in terms of building the Africa everybody wants to see, the Africa of the 2063, the Africa we want. It is these social institutions that are actually at the center of building that. And one word, I think that's one word that you also say, you've told us many times: principles and values. Let people act based on principle, not based on a feeling. It should be a matter of principles. Yeah, going to church is not a feeling. It should be a principle. You're going there to learn more about principles and apply these principles. Hold yourself into account. Each of us should hold ourselves accountable, because that is the reason of it. The reason of life. We are to be useful in life, and to be useful in life, you have to have some principles around which you operate. And these institutions are there actually to help nurture more of these principles. So what these institutions can do more is focus more on these principles and addressing why people are not implementing these principles more. The more we have people implementing the principles, the more we will see this intrinsic capital of Africa, which is the people, step into the plate and bring something.
So Bob, very succinctly put. But what will it take? Because you see, the thing is, there is the obliviousness by the citizens, and this obliviousness is manifesting from the perspective that someone else has to do something instead of the principles applied. They are looked up that someone have to apply the principle, as we relegate ourselves to the back burner. And I've watched this thing very carefully, and I'm really happy that we're discussing this at the moment. I believe our viewers who are watching could also throw in some comments if they can. And as we relegate ourselves to the back, waiting for others to do it, the problems continue to evolve and multiply. And it seems not to really be taken as a matter of urgency. So what will break the ice? The preachers, the Christians, the believers, because we're all supposed to do that which benefit society and at the same time protect our very environment in which we urgently need to, because environment is food, environment is health, environment is national security, environment is employment, environment is everything. So why is this not becoming a center where people can be ushered to leverage the value that are needed to do that which can benefit society? I don't see this really happening. And it seems like we need to stand on top of a mountain to shout.
Absolutely. I'll say two things. The first is accountability. Honestly, I think each of us, regardless of where, provided you are breathing, you need to hold yourself accountable. Hold yourself personally accountable, because if you'll be held accountable in the long run. So you better start holding yourself accountable. So I think that is the first thing. Regardless of who you are, whatever you believe in, whatever position you hold in society, hold yourself accountable to principle. Right, that is the first thing. The second, I believe, is those who are already living the principles, those who are providing examples, should continue. There's a day I think you told me that where you find that there is no benchmark, be the benchmark. You see? Yes. Be the benchmark.
Exactly. Be the benchmark. So that others can follow. Don't always wait for others to be the, because they will never be. They want you. As you are waiting for them, they're waiting for you.
Exactly. Yes. So that aspect of being the benchmark, really, for me, that was also a personal challenge that you have said it. There may not be examples around. Be the example and proceed. Even the other day, I think in a conversation, I told you that the vision has overtaken you. I think there's a day we discussed something like that. So, yes. But that is the way it's supposed to be. The vision, the clarity of vision needs to overtake each of us. We need to the ambition and the energy and the doing the principles need to overtake all of us and focus on that. And as we do that, then others will see, and more will be converted, and more will come to the faith. Because let's not allow 60 years of the same thing, 60 years of half steps. Really, the only change that needs to happen is we the people. We Africans need to.
I like that. We the people have to take charge. And then I think another comment from Che Chiramba. He says, sadly, some communities seem to think their own people cannot be trusted, and that unless it is brought in elsewhere, blah, blah, blah. He said, not easy to believe in someone with a great idea, but poorer than you. My own view, that is his own view, Chiramba, that he says his own view on the solar drying produce is that communities could try to grow and value add high value per kilogram, contrast the retail value of, say, chilies and compared to cassava, and the business model of the buyers should be on a profit sharing basis. Without that, brokers will profit more than the growers. What's your take on his comment?
Yes, sure. I think,
And before that, thank you very much, Chiramba. We appreciate you for watching and also for sharing these comments, which we highly appreciate. Yes, Bob.
Yes, thank you. I think, yes, business models, of course, should be formulated around the value, what is perceived to be value amongst those who will be the market. I think that should be the baseline here. If, for example, you talked of, the produce from a solar dryer being packaged in a way that, the value can be seen, that it can be marketed in a way that the more value seen amongst the majority. I agree with that, absolutely. That should be the approach, that whatever it is, product development has to be at the core of it, and this product develop in a way that value is seen amongst those who will be the end consumers. For example, I think the briquettes, for example, waste recovery to fuel briquettes is a very good example. 90% of the continent or around there use biomass as a primary source of fuel.
Right.
Now, here you're coming up with a product, coming up with a solution that can be perceived as being more dignified, more affordable, and better at doing what it's supposed to do. So I think that is the approach that we need to take. Product development focused on coming up with products or services that are actually perceived of value by the target consumer. Yes.
Excellent. Just lastly, before I hand over to you, because this is the sport and everybody on the sport, it's a conversation. You have to ask some questions or any clarification that you want to ask. my last point is the changing climate presents the best opportunities to the world. The price of solar has gone down. The opportunities in seeing environmental challenges from the dimension that we can turn them to wealth creating, job creating opportunities for young people. This seems not to be taking precedence. What is the missing link? I understand, yes, the money, the messaging and the narrative is not pitched around opportunities through the money lens most of the time, and so that dissuades people. But even when the young people, most of them, because Africa's youth and even the global youth are sovereign capital, they are what will be leveraged to make a meaningful change in a positive direction, whether we like it or not. The youth are Africa's best opportunity to be leveraged to drive transformational development, to build climate resilience, and to build back economies from the ravage of COVID-19. My point is, given this, do the youth believe in themselves? Yes, most of them do. Then if they do, why is the effort to make them become solution providers so difficult? And how can this ice be broken? Briefly.
Yes, thank you very much. I think the responsibility, is shared. It cannot really be, the youth cannot merely be, or the target cannot merely be recipients. They also have to play a role. The youth have a role to play. I mean, all of us have a role to play to use or to get the message that is being said and apply ourselves to it. I think in the beginning, during the test, we said that you can take a horse to the stream, but you cannot force it to drink. So it has to be two-way. The youth have to be midway. Secondly, I think also there have to be more targeted incentives given to these young people, especially those who are doing something good. We have to appreciate that already the business environment across the continent is improving, but more can be done to tap more opportunities. For example,
yes, Bob, you mentioned incentives. Maybe for those who are listening, just to break down some few incentives that governments, policymakers can be able to put in place to just ensure that our youth can tap into and seize these opportunities. Yes, practical incentives. That 1, 2, 3.
Yes, sure. Okay. The first one I can say, you can start from the education side.
Mm-hmm.
The education system should focus more on equipping learners with more practical skills that get them out there to drive solutions in areas that are already clear.
Right.
So there should be a clear linkage between what people are learning with the existing challenges or the existing gaps within an economy or within a country. So that there should be that clear link, so that somebody comes out of school knowing exactly the areas or the gaps that they need to fill, and they can then add more knowledge, inspire themselves more around a clear area. Right now, somebody can come out of school not really knowing where they can apply themselves in. So the more we have most of this clear, that somebody is in school, whatever they're being taught, it is theoretically sound, benchmark against the best, but it is more contextualized and aligned to addressing gaps within a particular economy or particular continent. Then we'll have more of our people. That is already an incentive, because somebody will come out knowing exactly the area that they can touch.
So what you are saying is that Africa needs an educational revolution.
Absolutely.
Tailored to the realities, not abstraction.
Absolutely. More of that is needed. Yes.
Excellent. The second.
Yeah, the second can be, though this is being done, but we need more of this. The bureaucratic institutions within our economies, the ones that actually meant to make the business environment better, they need to be more attuned to the needs of the people on the ground, the small business holders, the informal actors, the young people are setting their enterprise. The institutions need to be more attuned to them. They need to be more aligned to the needs of somebody who is starting afresh, who is starting from scratch. When a young person, let's give an example, hypothetically, a young person sees this discussion, is inspired to do something, says, okay, I'll step out there and start a briquettes making enterprise. They go up there, they hear, okay, you need to have a license to do this. They go to the licensing officers, and what they get there is more of bureaucracies and being taken around in circles. We need less of this, honestly. The institutions need them to work more for the people who are already doing something. So that is another incentive, I'd say.
So the institutions we have at the moment, you
Yes.
can say they're working against the people and not creating any enabling environment. Most of them.
Yes, they're not actively focused on the people. They are there, their mandate is clear, but when it comes to now the practical aspect of it, you don't see it. Yeah,
Terrible.
it's more trouble and less of solution. So we need the institution really working to target the need areas of those who are actually doing things on the ground, the young people in the informal sector. So the institution need to be more attuned to them and listen to them more and act. Yes, in doing like that.
And the
That will
third
be the
one.
second. Okay, the third one, I believe most of this is being done. The fiscal side of things, the fiscal incentive. We do not deny that the governments and operate based on the taxes people pay. But can we have a regime where those who are starting get some form of reprieve, that they don't pay, they're not penalized much for not maybe paying some taxes, so that they can be allowed to then stabilize themselves and grow the enterprises, be given some form of breaks
Right.
on some of these expenditures. And then over time, once they stabilize, then they can now be brought in to the formal regime of parenting. That will be another, I think, that can.
Yes. What we are saying is very practical steps, and what baffles is that sometimes these practical, easy steps are not taken up, and we're still looking for answers to